All right, welcome back to the HamburgerTrained podcast. Trying something a little different here for episode number 6. Got a bunch of Q&A questions from a Facebook group that I'm in, and then some other social media avenues as well. As you can see, I am now in the classiest podcasting studio in strength sports. It is literally a little tiny house behind my house that I don't use for anything, so I've spent the last 2.5 fucking hours smashing black widows and chasing snakes out and stuff. But yeah, so we're gonna get this rolling here, see how this works out. So the first question I have a question for non-enhanced mid 50-year-old guys. How do we bench twice a week without crushing our rotator cuff? So for some reason, it seems like there's a lot of masters level lifters in this Facebook group that I'm talking about. It's the Powerlifting Strength and Fitness group, or something like that. There's probably fucking 10,000 groups with that exact same name. A lot of 40 plus lifting questions for sure. And it's amazing there's not tons of definitive research for like what's best for 40s, 50s, and 60-year-old lifters out there. The general consensus is you want to preserve force production as long as you can. You want to preserve muscle mass as long as you can. So I mean, with all that said, I don't see any reason on earth why any man over 50 years old would not be on TRT unless you're allergic to it or something like that, or have some kind of pre-existing contraindication for why you shouldn't be doing it at all. But I mean, everybody should be doing everything they possibly can to live as long and a fulfilling life as possible, and that's definitely one of those things. I just turned 40. I'm on the cusp already. Like, if I wasn't still doing drug-tested powerlifting meets and stuff like that, I'd be on it. And plus, I'm still feeling good and still moving good. And so I guess I'll cross that bridge when I wake up one day and want to blow my brains out or something. But I haven't gotten there yet, so that's pretty good. So I just have a couple of points for our non-enhanced 50-plus-year-olds, 40-plus-year-olds, 60-plus-year-olds. I'm a big proponent of the if you don't use it, you lose it principle here, especially for your rotator cuffs. I mean, I would do as much direct rotator cuff work. I mean, I do. I preach this to anybody that will listen. As much direct rotator cuff work as you can possibly handle and it not affect your bench pressing and it doesn't make you feel all beat up all the time. Direct internal, external rotation work, periodic evaluations of your internal, external mobility and strength. Just Google it. There's about 1 million YouTube videos of little assessments, tests, and retests and stuff like that you can do to get that squared away and have some kind of qualitative measure of how you're improving over time. And then another big consideration is variation. I think becomes even more important the older that we get. For some reason, there is some crazy, stupid, dumbass trend of like hyper-specific training, especially in strength sports, where it's super high frequency. We're benching 4 days a week, squatting 5 days a week. It's nuts. Like, it's absolutely nuts. There's no reason for it, and you don't develop all the I'm reminded of a study that I read a while ago where it took a whole entire soccer club where it was elite youth soccer players, this travel soccer club, I believe it was in the United Kingdom or something. So these researchers were trying to develop a profile of what certain muscle group distribution should look like based on elite soccer playing. So they only ended up looking at one muscle. They looked at the vastus medialis muscles. That is like one of your middle quad muscles. It runs down and makes a little teardrop next to your knee and everything. And during this study, they realized there was over 100 kids that they tested where they measured the size of that VMO muscle at the hip, at the mid-thigh, and at the knee. Not a single pair of kids, no one had the exact same distribution of size from the knee to the mid-thigh to the hip. So these are all kids doing the exact same training program. They're all the same level of athlete. They're all doing the exact same resistance training program, running the same drills in practice, and not two of them had the same distribution of size in that one muscle. So you got to keep in mind, too, your VMO muscle at the hip, it's involved in hip flexion. I believe it's above 90 degrees. It helps pull your hip up. At the mid-thigh, your VMO is responsible for knee extension, and then at the knee, your VMO is responsible for kneecap tracking. So that is one muscle that does three very, very fucking important things to movement and athleticism and strength and everything else. And even all of these kids are doing all the exact same things. They're not developing at the same rate. So all I'm getting at here is you have a whole lifetime of probably just doing predominantly squats, predominantly benches, predominantly deadlifts and stuff like that. And in this case, bench pressing. You're not developing the musculature of everything that's involved at the same speed or distribution. So I mean, it's not really. It's a pretty. I don't even hear a lot of people talking about that. It's just, it's just people just start hammering this hyper specificity, and especially as we get older, we just can't handle it. So again, that study dealt with youth soccer players, but I think about it a lot because it's important. Like, I mean, it's important consideration when you're picking stuff, and then especially picking exercises. I mean, and then especially being older, there are specific studies on like Olympians, like athletes that made it to the Olympics, and retroactively going back and see who hyper specialized in their sport early on. So basically anybody that's specialized in their sport before like 16, 17 years old, they are more injured, they cannot practice more, even though they made it to the Olympics. They're still top tier genetic anomaly and everything like that. But the people that waited longer to specialize till later in life, they're hurt less later on in life. So obviously you can't build a fucking time machine. I'm just saying, if you did a lot of specialized training previously, you probably need to do a whole lot more unspecific, unspecialized training now. So also with that in mind too, I really think minimal effective dose is key here. Like, do you need to bench twice a week with a straight bar? Probably not. I mean, in your 50s, you're natural. You're not taking any performance-enhancing drugs or anything. How much muscle are you really gaining? How much extra strength are you really gaining off of that 2 days a week of straight bar benching? That's a lot of, that could be too much torque for your shoulders to handle at this age. Who knows? So I mean, I'm not saying don't press frequently. I'm just saying, like, one day could be a straight bar, another day could be dumbbells or just straight up assistance work, a bodybuilding day. Who the fuck knows? So, just something to consider. It seems like that total weekly volume is key for making progress when we get older, not necessarily the frequency that it's in. So, I mean, if you're benching the same amount of volume 3 days a week versus 1 day a week, you're going to see the same amount of progress, but that 3 day a week frequency, you might be a little bit less, you might be a little bit more beat up than 1 day a week where you have a whole week to recover from that straight bar benching. So, you just really want to figure out the least, training optimally, training efficiently is doing the least amount of work you can possibly do, expending the least amount of time doing it, and then expending the least amount of energy while you're doing it, and still seeing a desirable result. So, basically, you want to do as little as possible and still see a benefit, especially at this age. If injury prevention is a concern, especially with something that's injured all the time in this fucking sport, like a rotator cuff. If you bench at all for a period of time, you're gonna hurt your fucking shoulder. There's no way around it. We're loading the most unstable joint in our body, and doing a bunch of dumb shit with it. So, like, it seems like also another consideration, seems like we can preserve strength well into old age. It seems like people who don't strength train and start even in their 80s can get stronger and grow their muscles and, experience hypertrophy and everything else and muscle function improvements and stuff like that. So it's, just keep doing it, keep hammering away at it. And it doesn't seem like metabolism drops off until after we get well past 60 years old, especially in active populations. So, like, I'm 40, I can't even count how many people my age I run into that are like, oh, my metabolism sucks. It's like, no, you've been eating like a piece of shit for 39 years. It's going to catch up to you at some point. You might want to start looking at that. One thing I do think people should consider getting older too, not the made up metabolism problems, and if you're already training, hopefully you're going to continue doing that. Mitochondrial health. It seems like everybody's mitochondria just start to take a shit right around 40 years old. Your mitochondrial health starts getting worse, and that's the kind of your powerhouse of the cell. That's where all the energy comes from and everything, especially for all your muscles and your brain, everything else. So it's something to consider. So supplements I recommend. I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist. Do whatever the fuck you're gonna do. CoQ10 is huge, glycine, glutathione, I think N-acetyl-L-cysteine, just stuff people should take stuff people should take pretty much every day. Everybody should. Just mitochondrial health and preserving that like NAC load is definitely important. And then along with that, as far as mitochondrial health, you do want to try to work on some sort of upper body aerobic activity, like whatever that might be. I'm not saying go run a fucking marathon on your handstand or anything like that, but like little finisher circuits or whatever, little aerobic work, 3 sets to failure with dumbbell presses and rows. Or one I really like doing is I set a timer for like 12 or 15 minutes, and then every minute I switch between 2 exercises. Like the first minute's just an unloaded barbell shoulder press. The next exercise, just a really light band face pull. So for that whole minute, I'm doing reps, trying to anyway. By the time you get to minute like 4, it's a fucking nightmare. But you're building up an aerobic capacity for those upper body muscles as well, and I think that pays dividends in those smaller muscle groups, especially when you start accumulating some fatigue. So realistically, though, tears happen. You're gonna have a shoulder injury, like I said, at some point if you bench press. One study, if you want to give this a Google, whoever asked this question, I didn't put any names on anything because I'm a fucking idiot. So if you do end up tearing your rotator cuff, there's a study, comparison of early versus traditional rehabilitation protocol after rotator cuff repair, and umbrella review. So this looked at So this looked at mild rotator cuff tears. So this is not a full thickness tear. Anything that tears all the way through, like your supraspinatus is a big one people tear. If that's all the way gone, you're probably going to need surgery. There's nothing you can do about it. It seems like mild tears, anything that is not a full thickness grade 3 tear. So that's what they were looking at with a ton of people here in this study. It looks like that surgery plus physical therapy outcomes are almost exactly the same as just physical therapy with no surgery outcomes. So, I mean, you're saving money, you're saving pain, you're saving recovery time. So I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. I am just relaying the findings of the study, comparison of early versus traditional rehabilitation protocol after rotator cuff repair and umbrella review, where they found that mild tears healed exactly the same amount of function, pain, strength, and everything with just therapy and exercise compared to surgery, therapy, and exercise. So just something to keep in mind. So check that out if you're interested in reading that. It's a very interesting read. Recommendation on how to taper. When do you cut volume? When are the last heavy lifts? You ask 100 people, you ask 100 coaches, you ask 100 lifters, you're going to get 100 different answers for something like this. A lot of this is opinion. Luckily, there are a lot of people smarter than us that compiled a lot of research data on this to look at some averages. We can draw some conclusions from some of these. Obviously, there's going to be some differences from what everybody does here. So this first paper, the tapering practices of competitive weightlifters in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research. On average, I'm just looking at this so I make sure I do not fuck up any of this information here. On average, tapers lasted about 8 days, plus or minus 4 days. Total volume decreased by 43% on average during that taper period. Intensity stayed relatively high, with 90% being hit the week of the meet on a few key lifts. And then there was a training cessation of 1.5 to half a day out. So they'd stop training completely at, a day and a half to 12 hours out from the meet. Unsurprisingly, a comprehensive study on tapering for powerlifting was all over the place because, 99% of the shit you hear is just stuff made up by influencers to put on memes, and that's where everybody gets all their training information now. So this next paper, a sports journal called... From the Sports Journal, his next paper was Tapering and Peaking Maximal Strength for Powerlifting Performance, a review. So you'd figure there'd be some kind of applicable information here to powerlifting, but there isn't. Most powerlifters reduce training volume leading up to a meet by 30% to 70%. That is a very big range. Most powerlifters maintain a training intensity of at least 85%. That seems to be ubiquitous across the board, that intensity doesn't really drop off. It's just that volume starts going down. The taper itself, like the last one, I believe 8 days plus or minus 4 days for weightlifting. For powerlifting, we're looking at anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks on average. So still kind of the same window. Most powerlifters stop training completely. This is where we see a big difference. 2 to 7 days out from the meet. That's fucking crazy to take a week off. Like, it's so crazy to take a whole week off. You've done all of this stuff, like all of this exercise, all these, you've done all this like periodized programming to stack up, build all this momentum, and then people just don't do anything for a week. Like, what do you do for that week? That's crazy. Plus, if you believe in residual training effects, even after as short as 4 days, as short as 3 days actually, when you are peaked, when you are in top position for strength and power events, you start to see a cessation in performance for very highly trained individuals. And hopefully you are 7 days out from the meet, you're highly trained at that point. So like I'm just not a believer in a whole entire complete week out of the gym. I don't think many people are anymore. People must have filled the fucking survey out wrong or something for that. 2 to 7 days is nuts. I'm a much bigger proponent of the weightlifting study I mentioned first, 1.5 to 0.5 days out. Yeah, that makes way more sense. So with all that in mind, I recommend the following points. I'm just going to breeze through these. So keep intensity high. You want it at 80+%. Either cut your assistance work volume by halving your intensity or halving the number of sets you normally do. Again, there's no reason to cut out assistance work completely. You have used all of this stuff to get as strong as you possibly can, and now you're going to cut out 80% of it when you get close to a meet. Like, that's insane. So still do your assistance work. You need to do it. It's part of what got you strong. Most lifters don't need to do a taper longer than a week. I really don't think so, unless you are a highly trained person, or you just have such a crazy drop off in strength once you start decreasing your volume and stuff like that. Or you're doing like a world championship or something of that nature. But longer than a week, programming that's got to be a goddamn nightmare. Like, it really does. But longer than a week, I think training can stay exactly the same of what you're doing pretty much year-round until a week out, where you just cut the volume, and then you're going to feel like $1 million that following weekend. Most lifters don't need a complex peaking phase either. They just need to recover. So again, as soon as you cut that volume in half, you're going to feel so much better, even if intensity stays high on your main lifts, even if you're doing 85, 90+%. Once you've done 10 meets or so, you've been dedicated to competing for at least 5 years, then maybe you need to learn a little bit more about scientific methods and complicated concepts for peaking. But I mean, there's no point in stressing about it. I mean, and the ubiquitous advice of like, oh, you don't need to cut weight. Everybody's gonna fucking cut weight. Everyone's an idiot, so everyone's just gonna cut weight anyway. So it's just one more stupid thing to worry about. It doesn't need to be anything super complicated. How to water cut 15 pounds and make it not suck. Okay, I put way too much fucking time into looking into this. Figure out your baseline fluid intake. So to do this, figure out your body weight in kilograms, figure out 10% of your body weight in kilograms, then you take your body weight in kilograms, add that 10% of your body weight, and that is the total number of ounces you should be drinking every day, regardless of cutting or anything like that. So that is your baseline fluid intake. So here is my 8-day plan here of what to do to cut 15 pounds super easy. And I've done this for 32-hour weigh-ins at least over the course of my powerlifting career here without really any issues. It's funny, up until recently, last like 4 or 5 meets I've done, I've missed weight because I'm stupid. But I haven't done this. It's probably from drinking too much beer before the meet, to be totally honest. But so once you figured out your baseline fluid intake, 7 days out, you're going to have your regular fluid intake, your baseline. We're going to say BFI because I'm tired of saying it. You're going to drink your BFI. 6 days out, BFI. 5 days out, figure out 50% of your BFI and then add that. So you're drinking 1.5 times your BFI. 4 days out, same amount, 1.5 times. 3 days, now you're drinking double your BFI. 2 days out, same amount, so you have 2 days of drinking double what that baseline fluid intake is. 1 day out, you're going to cut out all salt. So I know this is longer than a day. You're going to cut out all sodium in about 36 hours. If you can tolerate it, cut down carbs a little bit. Those retain water as well. And now you're going to only drink 25% of your BFI for that day. So this, again, this is for this works fine for a 24-hour weigh-in. I've like I mentioned, I've done this a ton for 2-hour weigh-ins and stuff. You can even be a little bit more aggressive with this, I think, with a 24-hour weigh-in, but this is a great way to not feel like absolute dog shit and lose some weight. So day of the weigh-in, just as little fluid as possible until you weigh in. Hopefully it won't be too long. Most weigh-ins are in the morning. But that's it. Very simple. It's worked, like I said, about 32-hour weigh-ins over my powerlifting career here. Okay, next question. One thing I've always wondered is how crucial it is for your strength gains to make sure you consume 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body weight. I remember reading a study a while ago that claimed you really only need 0.7 grams of protein per pound and then only 0.4 grams per pound if you are a more advanced lifter. I could be slightly off with the numbers. Blah blah blah. Okay, I hate nutrition. I hate this shit because this stuff goes back and forth like crazy, and it's mostly thin-wristed, weak-neck nerds that are arguing about all this bullshit. I have a scientific answer for this, and then I have a, like, do you even fucking lift answer for this. So there's a million papers on this, and they change constantly. But if maximizing strength gains is the goal, eat as much fucking protein as you can tolerate. It seems like it seems like that 1 gram per pound of body weight should be a minimum for anybody that's trying to be lean or strong or have big muscles or be healthy. So there's all kinds of, 0.7 grams per pound is probably adequate from everything that I've seen. And by adequate is you're not going to be like cannibalizing muscle after hard workouts and stuff like that. But, like, I mean, do you want to be adequate, or do you want to ensure the most building block material possible for how hard that you're training and how hard you want to grow and everything? So it's just, there's so many weird answers. 0.4 grams per pound is not enough. That's just simply not enough. But a gram per pound, I mean, that's pretty much should be what you're eating all the time. And interestingly, our protein requirements as we get older go up. They don't go down. Our protein synthesis starts to, like, take a shit around 40 years old, and then it becomes it really becomes a problem when we hit 60, 70, 80. So I've read some stuff on how the protein recommendations for seniors is probably going to go up to something like 1.2, 1.5 grams per pound of body weight, just because protein synthesis is so fucked up. But I am a big proponent of more is better. You are not wasting any of this. You're not peeing out waste, like, you're not wasting protein. That is an old wives' tale. Your kidneys aren't going to shut down. Again, these are all like weird fucking urban legends that a bunch of boomers came up with because they think protein powder is steroids, and I don't fucking understand. So 1 gram per pound of body weight, you're fine, and just fucking get after it. 5th question here. I've seen only one other person talk about this, and I can't find other literature. Decompressing the shoulders after heavy bench days, what do you recommend? I'd strongly suggest looking into Kelly Starrett. He was the mobility WOD guy. He wrote that Supple Leopard book. Once you get over what kind of a CrossFit surfer bro douchebag he presents himself as, he's actually one of the smartest people on earth when it comes to any of this mobility, traction, distraction, all that stuff. And he's got tons of joint saving information. Again, this is one of those things like, oh well, you know how much tension you need in the band to actually distract a joint and make a change in the soft tissue and the elastic No, I don't care. I don't fucking care. I care what makes me feel good, so I don't feel like I'm shitting out my adductors every time I squat. And guess what? Kelly Starrett has awesome information about how to warm that stuff up and get it prepared to do a heavy squat. So I do have a bit of a personal bias here. I think stretching is important. I think mobility work is important. For some reason, there's just all these science-based meathead, like 20-year-olds on Instagram that are saying, "Oh, don't stretch. You don't need to stretch. You don't need to stretch ever." You still have like your infant flexibility. Like half of these kids don't even have fucking kneecaps yet. Like, of course you don't need to do anything. You're young. But Anyway, yeah, I would love to. I would love to see a study on like mobility helping somebody like me, a 40-year-old that's been lifting weights for 30 fucking years. As soon as that study comes out, I'll take that seriously. But yeah, don't stretch. You don't need to. Okay, I want to be able to get up and down off of a couch without wanting to kill myself. So I'll keep stretching. I'm also a big believer in soft tissue work, foam rolling, like lacrosse ball work, whatever. I'm a big fan of gua sha, like scraping therapy. There's all kinds of little stainless steel tools you can get off of Amazon for relatively cheap. Yeah, so I mean, like, there's there's not enough, there's no research really that's on people like us. There really isn't. People that are trying to get stronger over the longest period of time possible. They're just it's just so hard to come up with an answer that isn't completely pulled out of my ass or anecdotal, because that's the only information that I have on it. So luckily there are people like Kelly Starrett. His name escapes me right now, but the guy that did the jump stretch band stuff. Oh my god, I cannot believe I can't remember his name. Oh boy, damn. What the fuck was his name? Whatever. I'll think of it in a little bit here. But he also had some great information. Google jump stretch guy. Actually, Google jump stretch guy falls through a table. It's the funniest video I've ever seen on the internet. Let's see. But the further answer that question, I have one more note on this one that I almost glossed over. After I get done, and I try to tout this to anyone that'll listen as well. When I get done doing a heavy bench press day, I almost always either go straight to some tricep work because I have the arms of an 11-year-old girl. But at some point I will do some kind of overhead, some kind of vertical pulling, like a lat pull down or a weighted pull up or something, just to get that position, like to get that really, really big stretch. Just let it kind of hang there between each rep and a big pull on it, just for this very reason. And I've luckily only had one fluke shoulder injury due to a torn labrum from football that then decided to explode on my second rep of an 805 deadlift. Nothing really would have helped that too much, but I think sticking with this is the reason I haven't needed another surgery on that shoulder yet, at least, and the other one's still hanging in there, pun intended. But yeah, going to some kind of heavy vertical pull afterwards, just to kind of stretch out a little bit and get your lats a little bit stronger at the same time, I think is a good strategy. But check out Kelly Starrett, you'll find some awesome stuff. How much do you think rep range plays a role for hypertrophy on an individual level? I've tried high rep, 12 to 20. I'm assuming that's blocks, 12 to 20 rep blocks. I can't fucking read. But have made zero noticeable gains from it and little to no soreness. But 3 to 10 rep range blows me up and makes me sore for days. But I've had some clients who are the polar opposite. This is a pretty good question, but to go over, so just to create some context here, I have the materials from the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist certification of how they break up set and rep ranges and how they designate them. So for strength training, it's anything 85+% for 6 reps or less. Single effort power, so think like a power clean, 80 to 90% for 1 to 2 reps is power. Multiple effort power, 75 to 85% for 3 to 5 reps. So think like a clean and jerk or like a, I don't know, fucking triple jump. I got no fucking clue. Hypertrophy is 67 to 85% for 6 to 12 reps, and muscular endurance is 67% intensity or less for 12 plus reps. I kind of look at these recommendations like I look at like BMI. Body mass index is your height and weight, and then you get your resulting BMI score, and the score is great at a population level, but we can't really say BMI applies on an individual level. You can't really say these suggestions apply on an individual level. There is so much shit that goes into whatever your genetic predisposition for size and strength are. I mean, you have a whole like you have a whole length and velocity relationship. You have a whole length force relationship with your muscles, like where your attachments are, where your origins are of your muscles and stuff like that, how the direction your muscles have the pennation in, like the length of your fascicles that cause that pennation in your muscles and shit like that. There's so much stuff that goes into it, and literally the only thing you can do is exactly what you've done, where you just experiment, find out what works, and just kind of take it from there. But one point, like you said, you've done those higher rep blocks at 12 to 20 reps, and then as soon as you get to 3 to 10s, you blow up. Like, you have to consider too, you might have just gotten a shitload of muscular endurance. You might have gotten in a little bit better shape. Like, your general physical preparedness is at a much higher level now, that you're able to probably handle more volume and recover a little better from more volume from those 3 to 10 rep ranges as well. So even though, like the 12 to 20 reps just might not be enough stimulus, tension-wise, volume-wise, when you combine those together to see a lot of growth. But that might be a great preparatory phase before you change it up and then do your 3 to 10 rep ranges and blow up and get super strong and stuff. So, you really answered your own question. If that works, keep fucking doing what you're doing. Like, if you're still getting bigger and stronger, and then if you found that something different works for your clients, props for you, because I can't even count it. It is a goddamn plague on the internet, in real life too, with personal trainers and everything else, of people just either selling programs of stuff that they themselves are doing at that time, or where they just have everybody do the same thing forever ad nauseum. And it's amazing. You walk to a gym on day one, see somebody working with a trainer, come back 6 months later, and they look exactly the same, and they're still paying that person fucking $100 a session or whatever. It's nuts. But yeah, I really think you answered your own question with your question. So how about a training guide for, it's question number 7, how about a training guide for over 60s? I'm 65. Recovery isn't anything like it was my 30s, 40s, or even 50s. My sleep is good. The CPAP helps. My current setup is 4 training sessions, but done Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday. So a little 8-day split. Yeah, okay. So once we hit 60 years old, that seems like where the biggest aging-related metabolism drop-off happens, and then it just doesn't stop. I've actually worked with hundreds, maybe even thousands of people that are 50, 55 and older, chronic diseases and condition at this point. I've worked in a lot of places and a lot of seniors, like post-physical therapy, and then I managed a gym with a non-profit that only worked with people that were 50 and older. And just a couple of things that I think are absolutely fucking key for just health and recovery and everything else. You want to continue doing high force producing exercises. Force production takes a shit at 60 years old, even if you're training hard. And you have to start doing dynamic effort work. You have to start doing power work at that point, for general movement and stuff. Like, it's amazing how quick people lose the force they need to stand up from a chair, to turn a fucking doorknob, stuff like that. And then, doing force-specific training and strength training. I'm not saying you don't need to do that anymore, but that force and that high velocity, high acceleration work is crucial. Another point is grip strength. There are droves of studies out there now where grip strength is like the number one predictor of all-cause mortality at every age. The stronger your hands are, the harder it is for you to die from literally everything. Keep that up. Do direct grip work for sure. And my theory on that is your hands are so innervated. There's so many nerve endings in there, like having good finger movement and dexterity and everything else. You're independent. You can stay independent longer with strong hands that work well and do what you tell them and want them to do. So there's just definitely a connection there between like good neurological function and grip strength. I think that's my personal opinion on it, but there's tons of studies to back that up too. You want to do as intense a conditioning protocol as tolerable. Mostly focusing on keeping V02 Max as high as possible. So that's our other thing besides grip strength, besides force production, is the higher you can keep your VO2 max for longer. Same thing, you're less likely to die from literally everything. You definitely want to keep that up. So best ways to do that, lots of high intensity circuits, circuits with short bursts of high intensity. You can, if you've got mobility issues, you can hop on a bike and do 10 to 20 rounds of, 6 to 7 RPE coasting for 45 seconds, and then 15 seconds of an all-out sprint. Just keep your heart rate up during that intense part. Make sure there's a rest interval, and it's not fucking rocket science. You just got to do it really, really hard to the point of it feeling bad, and then keep doing it to try to keep that V02 max up as high as you can. Creatine is a miracle for preserving muscle. There's a whole slew of anti-aging positive effects. It's very, cognitive function preservation and stuff like that. It helps with depression. It helps with sleep deprivation. Creatine is a fucking miracle. Everybody should be taking it for their entire lives forever. Protein, like I mentioned before, protein intake needs to increase, so just keep it high. At least a gram per pound of body weight forever. And I mean, really, other than that, like, training and everything else should remain relatively the same lifelong, like, for the entire lifespan, especially if the goal is max strength. I mean, just keep your strength up, keep your force up. I really think the protein needs and the grip strength and the conditioning and VO2 aspect really need to be addressed as we get older if we want to keep this fucking meat train rolling along. Question number 8. I've been nerding out with fellow competitors, coaches I know recently about their training methods and noticed 2 distinct types of training. One which is higher in volume, but the intensity is quite conservative, less so on bench press, more so on squats and deadlift. The other is higher intensity RPE with significantly fewer working sets and competition lifts. In your coaching days, did your programming loosely fall into either of these buckets or a different one altogether, or did it vary based on a lifter by lifter basis? Would love to know more about how you programmed in general. I think I get your question. I've never had a bucket. I've never had like a paradigm that is stuck to with literally everybody that I've worked with. Everything needs to be individualized. Everyone is a completely different person with a completely different life and training experience leading up to finding, you and working with you as a coach or a trainer. So yeah, getting stuck in a specific bucket definitely limits what the lifter or the athlete, your client, can accomplish for sure, long and short term, I think. I have a pretty extensive coaching background, and personally, I think intensity, I do have some principles and methods that I think everybody should use, but as far as the bucket, I don't know if I got a specific thing I stick to. I think everybody needs intensity. I think that is the biggest thing that's missing from most training programs. So either heavy stuff or very, very, very heavy stuff, or very, very hard stuff, or very, very fast stuff. So I want to see maximum volitional effort. So just, like I said, just maximum intent, something like that, or maximum weight, maximum speed, or maximum throw up potential from a conditioning session. I think that needs to be addressed on at least a weekly basis for most people. That's a big one. Even on even deload weeks, even in and out of season, stuff like that, the intensity needs to stay high. And then volume and specificity should fluctuate, and progress is based on how far, blah, blah, blah. I can't even read my own fucking notes. Oh, my God. I think one of those fucking Black Widows bit me. I'm going into a K-hole of Black Widow venom. I don't even know what I'm talking about. So, yeah, volume, the way volume and specificity fluctuate on a person-to-person basis, totally individual based on how far out of competition is, whatever their goals are, stuff like that. Again, intensity should never drop below 90%, in my own personal opinion, on main lifts, whatever the variation for the day is. And I say main lifts and not competition lifts on purpose. I think the hyper specificity stuff, again, is just insane in this sport right now, and it's ruining long-term progress for everyone that's not the top 0.5% genetic elite that can handle squatting 5 times a week forever. And it's I just don't get it. Only doing squatting, benching, and deadlifting in your training. That's literally imagine being on a football team and going to football practice, and every single fucking football practice you just play a full padded game, 4 days, 5 days a week, and then you go play the team you're playing on Saturday or Sunday or whatever. Like, nobody does that. You go to a football practice, it's broken up by position group. There's days, there's days that are easier days where it's just walkthroughs. There's days where you condition a little harder. There's days where you don't condition at all. And 90% of a college football practice is position drills and walkthroughs, and maybe 10% you're going 90% speed, not even full speed ever. So I mean, and it's funny. Every single sport is structured like that, except for powerlifting for some reason, where it's like, oh, the only way you get stronger is squatting, benching, and deadlifting. You don't need to do any of that stupid assistant stuff. All those bands and chains are crazy. Like, you don't need to do like what are you talking about? Like, literally, like, it's not how our bodies work at all. Like, in the context of powerlifting, it'd be like going and doing a meet every Saturday and then just trying to add a couple more pounds every single weekend. So with this mindset, that should, by, a couple of years down the road, you should be the strongest person on earth if you don't get hurt, right? Like, because all you're doing is adding 5 pounds to each lift every time you go to a meet. Do that 4 times a year. Fuck, what's that? 240 pounds every 2 years you're adding on your total or something like that. So I mean, yeah, you do that for 10 years and you've added what, 2,400 pounds to your total. It's perfect. It's a perfect plan. Shit, I shouldn't even have said that. That should be part of my fucking life coaching business. I should start. I don't even remember what the fucking question was. I just went off on that. I apologize. So yeah, specific buckets. So me personally, I've got a framework consisting of high intensity, varying emphasis on volume and specificity. There's an infinite number of training variables that you can pour into it. The actual amounts of sets and reps that fit into it is completely individualized, but people should be hitting 3 to 7 reps over 90% each variation pretty much each week, in my opinion. If the goal is powerlifting, shit. I mean, even general population people, you need higher intensity to continue being alive. Question number 9. What were your testers and your builders when you competed? What supplemental movements did you keep to the off-season meet peak, if any? Favorite max effort movements? I still compete, so I don't know if this person was just confused. I still lift. I'm doing a meet in July. The wheels haven't totally fallen off yet. I did tear my fucking A2 pulley and my middle finger on my left hand somehow. I think I'm the only person that's done that in powerlifting ever. It's the stupidest injury, but it's getting better. So if something I've never had specific testers. I think they're kind of worthless in training. I think in the context of powerlifting, your tester is your competition lifts. I mean, you go to a meet, that's what you do. Figure it out from there. It's never been a concept that's like really made sense to me. But I mean, there's definitely exercises I do, and I've done them enough that I can get an idea of how training is going. I can get an idea of where my competition lifts are at in a pretty accurate range for sure. Like, for example, like if I'm pushing my like 6 to 10 rep max on RDLs like really hard for a while, I can, when I get to the point in training where I'm doing like an all-out set, like a true 6 rep max RP fucking 11, whatever it is, I can get a pretty good estimate of where my deadlift is at based off of that. Another one I use for my deadlift is reverse band deadlifts with an average band. I can accurately guess my competition deadlift within like a 20 to 40 pound range, and I don't do a regular squat, bench, and deadlift until I get to a meet. So I don't do any of those lifts in training. So having not necessarily a tester, but kind of a guesser, I guess, is what I call them. But it's not something where I just like I hit it and I'm like, oh, this is where I'm at, this is what I can do. It's like, okay, this either felt terrible, I got to work on this, or this felt great, I should be somewhere around here. But it's never something I'm specifically doing to test, because it's always I kind of throw out anything that doesn't directly go towards my total growing. So like so it's still a builder that I can guess off of, and not a specific tester that I'm doing, if that makes sense. I've never really liked that concept. Number 10. So I've been in the gym for about 9 months. I've only started squatting and benching 4 months ago, but I noticed I got better and more confident lifting after recently adding a strict cardio routine 3 times a week after work. I've heard nonstop that cardio ruins gains, but it never made sense to me. So I came here for feedback. I'm thinking a higher VO2 max is good for lifting. It means your body's able to process more oxygen efficiently, allowing the cells in your body to operate a stronger manner. From what I understand, cells in your body need oxygen to burn glucose and lactate to create energy in the form of ATP. Okay, there's 12 more sentences in this question. I mean, this is fucking awesome. It really is. You're thinking about it. You're looking into it. You're obviously reading some stuff. None of this is incorrect. Like, none of this is wrong that you said in here. It's just kind of you're hitting that paralysis by analysis point where instead of spending time thinking about it and planning it, you should probably just be fucking doing something. Like, you should probably just really be fucking doing something about it. But it sounds like, I mean, if you're doing that 3 days a week, spending 80% of your cardio in zone 2 training. If 3 days a week of like 20 to 30 minutes of moderate intensity cardio is causing an interference effect on your strength, it's because you're fucking out of shape. You need that cardio base to be able to recover from lifting weights, to be able to recover from lifting weights at a meet, to be able to recover from a session to session thing that you're doing. I don't understand why like cardio is some kind of like scarlet letter or some shit in this sport in general. Like I said, I mean, if it's making you feel better and you're doing better and your lifts are getting better, then don't listen to anything anyone says that tells you it's wrong. It's the only time you got to start getting worried about it is when a meet's getting closer. You're probably gonna have to back off of it a little bit because you're gonna have to, change your volume intensity of your training and everything like that. So you have to do the same thing with any kind of physical activity that requires a recovery, like a refractory period and everything. It sounds like you're on the right track. And again, I love it. I'm a huge exercise metabolism nerd. I'm an adjunct professor at a local university here. I actually teach some of this stuff. So like I said, you're not wrong. I just got some fun information on this that I looked into. I went a little crazy on answering this question here, and this might be my part 1 for this podcast because I'm hitting 50 minutes, so I'll answer the rest of them on a separate one. So for anybody unaware, VO2 Max is mentioned in here. So VO2 Max is your milliliters of O2 per kilogram per body weight per minute that you're basically pulling in. So this is how well you pull oxygen out of the atmosphere and how well your muscles can use that extra oxygen for a sustained period of time while you're doing any kind of muscular work. So it's just how much oxygen you're using in a minute, basically, and it's kind of a ubiquitous measure of aerobic capacity and aerobic performance. So just some interesting shit about this because I love this stuff. It's fascinating to me. So a great question is, does a higher VO2 max automatically equate to greater exercise or sport performance? So if we take Lance Armstrong, who's often cited as like the superhuman VO2 max guy, where a typical adult has a VO2 max, if they're in okay shape, it's 40 milliliters per kilogram per minute of oxygen they're consuming. Lance Armstrong was around 85 in his heyday, so about double what a normal person was. And he had some interesting genetic markers and genetic predisposition for just being really good at aerobics that were kind of interesting, that were very unique to his physiology and everything. So if we look at somebody else, the greatest cyclist of all time isn't Lance Armstrong. It's this guy Eddie Merckx, who allegedly had only a 77 VO2 max. He also had 538 road cycling wins and 11 Tour de France wins, and Lance only had 7. So Eddie is a much more prolific competitor. Lance had a much higher VO2 max, so he had that better standardized test. Wildly, it's also reported that Eddie had a 40 beats per minute resting heart rate since birth. Which I don't know how fucking true that is. That's kind of one of those on the line. I couldn't find any information to counteract that. There's no. I mean, this guy was a racer in the fucking 70s or something. So with that all in mind, who do you think has the highest record VO2 max ever? So I mean, think of all the greatest endurance athletes you've ever heard of, that have ever existed, all the great feats of sport you've ever seen people do, greatest competitors of all time, especially people involving heroic levels of suffering and stamina through their event. Who comes to mind? So give you a second to think about it, but if you didn't think of Swedish psychologist Oscar Svensson, you were wrong. Because Swedish psychologist Oscar Svensson has the highest recorded VO2 max of anybody that's ever lived, or anyone that's ever done the test. Oscar scored a 97.5 VO2 max, which is mind-boggling. That is so much oxygen that you are using in your body per minute. It's mind-blowing. Like, I don't know what they use to test. The fucking tubes that I use to calibrate these on metabolic carts, I don't even think they go this high. Like, I don't even think... It's like a $10,000 cart. I don't think it goes that high. He had a 97.5 VO2 max in 2012 when he was 18. This is a couple years before that. He scored a 77 before he started training for any sports. Genetic anomaly. So before he even started training... he had the same VO2 max as Eddie Merckx, the greatest cyclist of all time. So this is pretty mind-blowing. The reason he's not a household name, and like considered the greatest endurance athlete of all time, was he got bored. He got bored with biking and alpine skiing. He took some time off and he never came back. He went to school for psychology and stuck with that. And he also has one of the most unintentionally hardest quotes when asked about his sports career. When he was, according to Google Translate here, when he was in an interview talking to somebody about all this stuff and why he left, the talent is in the head after all. That's what you create yourself. The physical is just a bonus. So this is quantifiably the most genetically gifted, talented endurance athlete that's ever lived, and he quit. It's just, and then he says a quote like that. It's just very interesting. So there's let me see. A couple other cool pieces of information here. So another question here related to lifting: does a higher VO2 max result in better recovery between sets? Weirdly, probably not. In a recent study, looked at a bunch of 28 well-trained men who squatted with 70% of their squat max. They had a 90-second rest and squatted again. One more 90-second rest, squatted one more time to failure. The VO2 max of the participants had no bearing on how many reps they could do and how many reps they could do to complete the 2 sets to failure while they were fatigued. So recovery time in between this specific study with squats, I couldn't find anything else that dealt with squats or anything intense. I'd really be curious to see if VO2 max has any bearing on a 3 lifts done over 90% with about a 10, 12, 15 minute break in between, like a powerlifting competition, but none of that stuff exists anywhere. The name of that study was Relationship Between Maximal Oxygen Uptake Within Set Fatigue and Between Set Recovery During Resistance Exercise in resistance-trained men and women. If you want to take a look at that. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, so is that an excuse to be a big sloppy piece of shit? Probably not. Like, we should probably work on our aerobic metabolism, especially, like I mentioned, mitochondrial health. That's one of the biggest drivers of making sure your mitochondrial health is good. I mean, that helps your recovery, helps you be less sick, you feel better. Another issue with long-term strength training is huge spikes in blood pressure. We see a lot of people that do have high blood pressure in this sport. It can lead to like hardening of the arteries and stuff like that. So just aerobic training from a general health perspective is probably a good idea, even though it sucks and it's boring and nobody likes doing it. Let's see. Another consideration for aerobic training for strength sports: when you look at one of the biggest differences between an elite level athlete and like a recreational beginner novice level athlete, elite level athletes have a superhuman ability to chill out after they get done doing something really intense, really hard, competitively, especially in a sport. So that's called returning to going from sympathetic dominance to parasympathetic dominance activity. So it's just whole functions of the nervous system. So sympathetic dominance is your fight or flight mode. Parasympathetic dominance is your feed and breed mode after you get done with intense activity. So elite level athletes can return to that state way faster than their kind of not as experienced, not as good, not as competitive counterparts. Which it's really interesting. It's one of like the bigger metrics that separates elite athletes from lesser athletes and stuff like that. So definitely aerobic work can help with that transition. Being more aerobically fit helps you calm down a little bit more. I've even seen recommendations of doing like 10 or 15 minutes of very light aerobic work post-workout to help transition to that parasympathetic state. I tried to do some kind of very light conditioning, very light cardio after my main training sessions, and I notice a huge difference in the way that I feel afterwards versus just shutting shit down and leaving as soon as I get done my last exercise. It's definitely a big difference in my experience. Let's see. Okay. All right, so that was the end of the questions that I had from the powerlifting, strength, fitness, the fuck it's called group. So I'm going to get this published, and then I will go through the other, what do I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 6 more questions from just regular old Facebook that I will get to after that. But all right, cool. Thank you for listening.